Here we are. I'm Justice Whitaker. I'm here tonight with Chelsea Odufu at the BFA Diaspora Table Talk series. So glad to have you with us, Chelsea.
Thank you very much to be here.
How are you feeling? Everything's good? Like, how has your energy been? How are you feeling today?
I feel great. I feel like this pandemic has given me a lot of peace, just in terms of just like, you know, in the beginning of last year, I felt like I was still really working really hard to try to change things that were out of my power. And I think even thinking about the whole journey as a filmmaker, you know, there's times where we we want to be on right now. Like, why isn't this happening? But I think that the stillness of these past year and a half has just allowed me to be very comfortable in like the process, the journey, comfortable, you know, faith-based, pursuing art is a faith-based journey, low key or high key. So just like I had to deepen the faith. So I feel at peace. I feel great. I'm happy.
That's good. No, that's good. It's brilliant. And it's been a little different for everyone. You know, for me, it's also been like the serenity, you know what I mean? Like, let's just slow it down. And really with that comes, I think, clarity, you know, a lot of times. So yeah, that's been very beautiful for me as well. And have you been able to create or produce any work at all, like of any screenplays, like anything? Because everybody's been in different places like over the last year with their creative output.
No, for sure. So I created in September, this past September, I shot an experimental doc called Everybody Has a Right to Survive. So me and my partner, Eli, he's an amazing musician, saxophonist, producer. So we were like, yo, like, I want to do a project every year. Like, I want to make sure that no matter what in the world happens, that I'm able to create a solid piece of work every year. So we made a short together, partner on it. I'm doing the visual and like the conceptualization. He was doing the sound. We probably got about maybe seven different creatives to come together over the summer to shoot the project. So it's pretty much an experimental doc exploring ultimately like the Black experience during the pandemic, how Black people were kind of processing everything. And also at the time of like how they were also processing the Black Lives Matter movement that kind of re-rose in the public consciousness of, not that it was ever lost, but I feel like, you know, it kind of awakened again in terms of you know, for everybody in terms of that energy. So kind of making a piece on that, but from my magical perspective. So visually, kind of I was thinking about the different energies, like how different, when I was first conceptualized it, I was like, how are different zodiac signs or zodiac elements ultimately processing this pandemic, right? Like, I'm a Sagittarius, I'm hella anxious. Like, I hate being confined. Like, I have fire sign energy, right? So how are different energies thinking about the elements ultimately navigating through this pandemic? So visually, it's like water signs kind of align that imagery, like very magical imagery, like kind of showcasing Black people in their God bodies, despite the fact that obviously Black people have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. So It was interesting. I'm not doing the best way of explaining it, but it was an interesting piece, visually showcasing Black people in their God bodies, kind of personifying these elements like earth, fire, air. What's the last one? Earth, fire, air.
Water. You're the fire sign, so the water is like at the last of your list.
No, for sure.
Are you a November Sag or a December?
I'm a November Sag. So I actually have a lot of Scorpio energy in my chart, but my chart kind of gets all over the place. So when I start telling people like I'm not gonna tell y'all so y'all can judge me.
Well, I'm Sag like straight through my chart. I'm like Sag on Sag, and then like a little Pisces at the end to cool out all that like fire energy. But I feel you too. I'm the same way with like my creativity and just always needing to create, how that manifests in different ways. So that's dope. That sounds like a beautiful project. And I also do like experimental documentary. So I love, you know, that we're pushing that envelope now, you know, and I know you are like a multi-hyphenate like me, so you have a lot of different, you know, elements, but what does experimental documentary like mean for you? And do you also make like traditional documentaries, or do you like kind of live in that experimental space? I love to make things that are always pushing the envelope of form, because because that's what the content is always doing. The Black content is always pushing the envelope. So I feel like, but how does that manifest in the experimental documentary kind of world for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can agree. Like, I'm always trying to push form also. I've never done a traditional documentary form. Not that it doesn't excite me, because I've watched some life-changing documentaries that made like my stomach, yearn, like, but I love, for me, another element of my creativity is like the creation of like thinking about like, I'm obsessed with like outer space and like thinking about the cosmos, or thinking about just like thinking about identity from a spiritual element that I feel like if I was to shoot traditional documentaries, not that I couldn't do a documentary on spirituality, but how do I kind of put this thing, how do I put spirit and form in a traditional documentary? Like, if that's what my work kind of centers on. So yeah, I mean, so how I was able to make this experimental is kind of thinking about how I utilize sound differently. Also thinking about when the visual and the image and the sound don't really connect. Wanting to make something feel like a stream of consciousness in terms of audio.
Is there any interviews? Yeah. So
there are interviews. So I interviewed maybe about 30 different people, 30 creatives. And I pretty much wanted to kind of just take small moments from things that they said. And I wanted it to feel like a stream of consciousness. So not really hearing any beginning or end of necessarily a statement at all times, but just everybody's continuing to add on to this one sentence based off of their thought. So it's just kind of sound, right? The way that you experience it is just kind of different. You're just kind of hearing different voices kind of speak to you.
Sure.
But you never know who those voices are. The voices don't connect to the images. It's just the images represent the energy of the voices that we hear that are supposed to represent the collective, or a specific collective experience that I was showcasing. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's an experimental doc because I was doing research. I thought I was doing research by interviewing folks and getting to know who they were and how they were processing. And I didn't think about applying any traditional form of anything. I just created, and I didn't know when I shot what it was gonna. Like I shot it and I was like, damn, like now I gotta how am I going to change the structure? I didn't have an idea I had an idea, but not really a plan of how I was going to execute when I got into the edit. So
of course. That's part of the experimentation. Of course.
Experimentation. Like, what is this shit about to be when it's done? We don't know. We're going to see.
I'm like 5 years deep in a very personal feature-length experimental documentary project about my father and like his trauma after being a Vietnam combat soldier. So it's all about like trauma, but it was the same thing. It's called the trauma cycle. And it was the same thing. Like I was shooting material, like short experimental films and like other pieces, some stuff. We ran some like 8mm film in the woods and like all this different stuff. And then I saw it all and I was like, wait, this is my dad's story. Like I was looking at all these things and I was like, why is it this theme is like coming out of me when I think I'm in these different spaces, but really it's like there's a through line, and same thing. It was like, now we got to put all these things. I thought that was 3 films. Let's put them into one, edit sequence and see what happens, and then that's when I was like, okay, wait, what if I went back and really got some interviews, my pop's reading his journal from the war, you know what I mean? I was like, put all these different things in. And so it's been a process. And like, even today, I was just in the grants, in the, in the applications.
We got some shit doing more.
Let me get that money.
Hey, sure.
But yeah, that's cool. So in terms of your content, like that's a lot about your structure. You're an experimental filmmaker. Where did all this come from? Like tell me a little bit about your history as a filmmaker. Did you go to school for this? Like, how did you learn and get interested in the cinematic arts? What kind of launched you to get where you are now?
So, I mean, I've been doing film. I started doing film at like 14. NYU had this program called Future Filmmakers Program. That was like a free program.
No, I used to teach at the Future Filmmakers Workshop. So when I was a student there. Yeah.
I was a student in the Future Filmmakers Program. Beautiful. Every Saturday, 9 to 5:30 a.m. inner city students I was from Jersey. I'm from Jersey, but I I would travel down to New York every single Saturday. They had the Panasonics, you feel me? I felt mad cool taking it back to school. But that's how I got in it. I think somebody honestly sent me the program, and I was already kind of into photography, but I got accepted to that program. And then after that program, I got accepted to like NYU had at the time, I think like a high school film program in Ireland. And I went to that program. So then I kind of fully continued to just get submerged and like really structured, because the Future Filmmakers program was pretty structured in terms of like, I got to school freshman year and I'm like, this is the same class.
For sure. Oh, for sure.
This was the class I took at Future Filmmakers.
Yes, definitely.
So definitely people should apply to the Future Filmmakers program if there's any young people listening. And
for sure. It is an excellent program.
And a great way to just connect with professors. Like some of the professors from our Future Filmmaker program wrote my recommendations into NYU. So just like a little shameless plug for that program. But yeah, from young 14, I then like went to NYU for college. It was like a natural progression. I also used to take classes at Parsons New School they had a high school program also where I was doing, before I did film, like photography and graphic design. So when I was in a graphic design program, they had like this thing, like, I don't know what the assignment was, but all I know is I came home and like I did a series of like utopian worlds that like kind of all had me centered around it. So it's like me with my braids, and I like turned my body into like this like planet that was Chelsea planet, like my hair turned into waterfalls. So I was very always just like in between how I would do my film work and like my graphic design. My graphic design was like experimental astrology, Black people in cosmos, mermaids. And then my film work at the time, conceptually, I wasn't there yet, right? Like when I was 14, I was there in my graphic design. And then I think my personal statement into college is about being dark-skinned. And I think I was a Martin Luther King scholar at NYU. And so I kind of was in NYU thinking about identity, social justice, and all these different things. Like I wanted to have a voice as a filmmaker. That was something I wanted to find freshman year, which I think helped set me apart from other filmmakers in the program who didn't necessarily know what they wanted to talk about. So I kind of found my niche and my voice early. And, also I think when you're in film school as a Black student, it's kind of like a decision, like, are you going to tell stories about your people, or are you not? Are you going to like not tell stories? Like, are you going to just tell stories, or are you going to be intentional about like, nah, this is the Black experience? So go ahead.
No, I was just thinking it's funny, because like I think a lot of artists and black artists are faced with that question, right? Like, am I a filmmaker or am I a Black filmmaker? And like, do you want to be sort of pigeonholed or labeled and things like that? But I think what you're saying is very real, because you have to make that choice. You really you make the choice on your own. Like, what kind of stories are you going to tell? What kind of projects are you going to take on? And that doesn't mean that you can't go direct blockbusters. Like, look at Ryan Coogler, you know what I mean? He created an entire path. His whole career is Black. You know what I mean? He's fully focused on Black stories, and he's at that level. So I just think that, that's a reality that we're all faced with. And some people think they can kind of, escape it, but it's really there, it's there for all of us.
Not to say that if I wasn't like, even if my name is Chelsea, like on paper that could go any race, but because I wrote it regardless, like when I'm seeing my classmates read my script, it will always be hella dramatized, like hella neck rolls. Like they just thought my characters are Black, even if I might have not even said what they were or like mentioned it in the script. But I mean, I think that definitely helped me kind of be unapologetic about what I wanted to write about. I was starting to do music videos for a group called Oshun in school, who was exploring their own spiritual path with Ifa, and kind of working with them and wanting to be also authentic in how I was able to help them visually represent themselves. It kind of also introduced me to that world of spirituality. And I think my first film was on colorism. That kind of was like, it's called The Love Below. It's online. It's still very powerful. My second film was called Ori Inu in Search of Self, and that was a coming-of-age story about an Afro-Brazilian girl who was conflicted between connecting with her Afro-spirituality roots of Candomblé in Brazil or practicing Christianity when she came to America. So I made that film, and that was around the time when, again, it was like 2015. So yeah, 2015, I feel like at that time, there was a lot of films coming out about police brutality just based off the time. because every person that was Black who was living in that time, I mean, not everybody, let me not make this major, but the people that I was surrounded with, or surrounded by were all very engaged in the Black Lives Matter movement, Michael Brown, protests, the whole, it was an engaged time for, I feel like, a lot of people of my generation, from the Trayvon Martin to the Michael Brown, like it was the time of Black activism, and also Black people thinking about ways to identify outside of like a Western lens. Like a lot more Black people, I felt like, were like wearing dashikis and like trying to connect to the, remember that time? Like dashikis was mad popular.
It goes in cycles. I'm
seeing dashikis again.
Nah, from 94, you know what I mean? Like that was 94 to X-Clan, and you had, you know what I mean? They were pushing that narrative, and then it falls, and then you see,
and it's a rising again, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of approach, like, instead of being like, yo, I'm about to make a film about like, police brutality, like, and like how Black people responding to this, like let's widen out the picture, right? And I think that kind of led me to like, how are Black people mourning in this time? Like what is Black spirituality matters in this time also, right? Like, so that's kind of what got me to make that film with my brother, Iman. Shout out to my brother. And yeah, so that's how we made that film. And I think that film ended up kind of just doing well. Like people really received it. We were trying to move that film. Like we were moving a mixtape. I used to work at the Source, and I'm saying I used to see all the artists and stuff. You feel me? Try to hustling to get press, how they was hustling to get on, and like, yo, I got a movie. Like I'm going to the Source. Like, yo, I got a movie. Right. Like dead serious. Like I'm like, so yeah, we hustled a lot. Me and my family hustled a lot for that, and kind of was able to create some buzz. We shot that half of it in Trinidad, half of it in the States. I kind of help people know who I was within like the Black film space. And I was working for Spike. I did a couple of different things. My story is a little place, so but yeah.
But before we even go there, so you shot in Trinidad. I hear you talking about like exploring a lot of the Orishas and the Yoruba spirituality. What's your connection? What's your background? What's your connection to the continent and like to the diaspora from your own identity?
So I'm Nigerian and Guyanese. So I think that although I don't have any family members who do practice, who are African spirituality practitioners, I think for me, I just grew up just always hearing stories of like, just that kind of mystical stories, even if just like my mom telling me stories of like the old hag and, that like turns into a tumbling ball of fire in Guyana and like will come in your house and like bite babies, like, like, or like mermaids, like literally growing up really hearing about they call them fair maids in Guyana, and like hearing stories about people who put it out and like food out, and like, or like somebody who fell in love with a mermaid, or like the Bakuman, like it's kind of like this little gnome that like lives in like a genie, like in Aladdin, like the little genie in a bottle that like if you don't feed it right, it'll come and pelt your house down. Like, like, and even when I was shooting in Trinidad, like I had the person who I hired to be my assistant director, we were location scouting, and she said, if I shot in this one town, she would have said no, because this town is known to have like, old hags or whatever. So like, it was just interesting for me in general to like, and it's something I always think about, to like grow up in a space where even if you're in a Christian household, that this awareness of spirituality or the multiple dimensions that we live in the world, right? Like we're not only in this physical space. There's spirits and spirituality, all types of different, things that roam this universe alongside with us as humans. And I think that was the biggest thing from young that stuck with me. Like there's things that I can't see that are still around me. How do we connect to God? We don't see it, like faith, like, so I think all of these concepts are things that have allowed me to open-mindedly explore and research different spiritualities. And then I think also just like from a Black perspective, like when you learn about Christianity, no offense to my Christians, I am Christian, but when you learn about Christianity, or that's, I don't know. I pray to God. I pray to God.
It's abstract, girl.
It's complicated, and that's just being real. But when you learn about the history of Christianity, it sometimes becomes very hard to you know, you hear about how Christianity was used to colonize the African mind. Like you hear about, you know, King Leopold and how he, you know, ultimately in Congo, King Leopold of Congo, and what he did. And like, you hear about these things, it becomes extremely hard. And then when you start also meeting people who ultimately engage on spiritual practices that is different, but are completely going against the stigmas you were taught or indoctrinated into believing, it then also makes you take a step back and be like, hold on, like, how do people say, like, how can I decolonize my mind? How can I take a moment to like look outside of what I was just told and just like do the research for myself? So I think all of my work is kind of like that exploration of like, you know, like how do people connect into the highest, to the highest, like how, like all my work, I feel like at the root now, like even beyond like just like religion, right? Like, I feel like I'm at the point now where my work in the future will probably be more about like our species, or not to be on, but our species less than it is about race. Because I feel like as I continue to travel and as I continue to learn about different spiritualities, it's not like I don't have any one. I sometimes get left off even more confused or, you know, like it's wide, but you know, like I was in Mexico and I'm learning about the Mayan culture and like their connection to the cosmos and spirituality, or even thinking again, like somebody was telling me the other day, like just thinking about if the Mayans thought that the calendar ended in 2012, where are we at right now? What's happening? What's the world? Like just thinking outside, like meeting people. I've been meeting people in Mexico who, legitimately are like, I'm from the Andromeda Galaxy. I'm from the Sirius B star. So then, and these are these are people of color.
Yeah. Have you studied about the Dogon people and the Dog?
No, for sure. So Black Lady Goddess, my TV pilot, is based off of, is inspired by the Dogon creation narrative. They believe they were their creator and artist who gave them all this ancient knowledge about the cosmos, the stars, and the universe.
And the ancient knowledge is it's out there. And what's beautiful that you're, you know, experiencing and tapping into is like, those narratives do exist. They exist on all of these different, you know, cultural planes. They exist on different temporal planes, you know, and like what was happening during that time, what was happening on another part of the world, like what was going on with the Mayans. And to coalesce those things, you can start to see those similarities and like the through lines and being like, oh, the communication, if it wasn't physical, then it was spiritual. You know what I mean? And a lot of times,
sorry.
No, I'm just saying a lot of times I think we see that we lose that. We lose like those physical representations of what used to be. Like I always love the airbenders, right? Like in the, you know, they made The Last Airbender. I guess that movie sucked. I
love that TV show though. I'm always with the fire.
So
the Water Nation. Like that's still
exactly. Yeah.
My work.
But that idea of just like, we are the ones that manipulate, just like you're talking about how our spirituality connects with the, you know, the different elements, and we are the ones that manipulate the air, you know what I mean? And like, as a filmmaker, we're the ones that manipulate the light, you know, like film and visuals like that to me it actually is spiritual, just the act of creating images, because like the whole fact that we're front facing, eyes are front facing, like how did we evolve? Like you're talking about us as a species, like all the way back, like we all came from the same, you know, the jellyfish on the shore, or like whatever we were, dinosaurs, fish, but the cones and the rods and light itself, God said, let there be light. And we then came with these tools and machines, and we done captured that shit and we manipulated it. Like, you're an airbender, I'm a light bender, you know, and that's what's beautiful of being a filmmaker, you know. And so when you're saying it's spiritual, I love that, because I think that a lot of artists don't engage on a spiritual plane. You know, they engage on a physical plane and they engage on a mental plane, but they don't really engage on like that spiritual plane. So it's just beautiful to see you out there poking into all those different corners and, you know, trying to bring it together. My first film in Ghana, when I was like, did you do any study abroad programs at NYU?
I didn't. I was so sad that I don't even know when I was going to be able to, with how
I was out. I got to NYU. I was like, oh, I can go to Ghana. I can go to South Africa. I'm out. peace. New York will always be here. I'm out. I spent, you know, a semester in Joburg. I spent like a year in Accra. And that was, for me, that was my time of just being like, feed me this spiritual energy. And just obviously my Black American ancestry, going back to those places, the point of no return, the Elmina castles. You have to work through all of those really basic, like, historical traumas before you can really ascend. You know, that kind of spiritual ascension. If you still have all of that stuff on your shoulder, you can't, you know. So, and so many people do. So many people never have any way to relieve any of that. You and I are out here like floating, like, you know what I mean? But so many people are not even ready for that, you know. So it's a process. And I try and bring that to the work, you know, that process of lifting the burden, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, for sure. I think and anything I do creatively, it's like, how can I elevate the consciousness of people of color? And also, like, you know, there's just so many different things. I mean, I've just been having such great conversations recently, you know, like, even just like, and this is a film conversation, not a spirituality conversation, but I mean,
it's all,
you know, somebody was talking to me the other day, like, what's the difference between a spirit and a soul, right? Like, and like thinking about like that spirit is actually just like that spark that gives, like, that like is what gives humans, right? Like your soul, you can lose your soul, or like your soul can like do some, you know, go to the dark side or go to the light, but like that's your spirit is something that you can never lose. Like, somebody could take your soul, but not take the spirit, you know? So just thinking about, I've just been having some really deep conversations, and I'm excited to see where my work goes. And also, like, that's why it's so important. I feel like, just how you were saying you was out, you know, like, I feel like there's so many filmmakers who feel that they have to be one place at all times. And when I realized, like, when I'm looking at filmmakers that, like, the dude who created Avatar, I don't even know his name, but I love his movie. James Cameron? Was it James Cameron?
Yeah, that's James Cameron, yeah.
James Cameron, my man, James Cameron, right? Like, James Cameron, like, obviously had his long career, but a lot of these filmmakers are not old, but like they grown, like they're like, you know, when they're like, and I think things are changing now, but like when I'm, you know, like Ryan Coogler's fairly young, obviously, and there are more young filmmakers who are younger filmmakers who are getting on, but if I don't necessarily see lots of, you know, 21-year-olds directing Westworld, like getting Westworld picked up, right? And that's something that I had to be real with myself when I was doing what I was doing. Not that I'm not going to shoot for the stars, but that the journey is not only about my talent, it's about my, like, the experiences that I have, me taking the time to like build my social network, this whole journey that will ultimately has left people where they are, you know, like, and getting on at the time they got on. So I think it's so important. I feel like in thinking about how long the journey may or may not be, to have a fruitful journey, no matter what, to not just be like, yo, I gotta be here, you know, because I feel like, you know, like now, like if this journey, it might take it, hopefully I get on tomorrow, but if I got on in 3 years or 2 years, at least in them 2-3 years while I'm still pushing when I gotta push, I'm gonna be like having so much cultural and like world experiences and just like meeting so many different people that like the ideas are so going to be so unlimited for me, you know. Hopefully I'm seeing confidently.
Well, don't worry, you just you have a moment to see yourself in the mirror as like your elder with like maybe a decade on you, with all respect, but like, you know, that is exactly what it is. And I'll tell you, like, when I left NYU, I started teaching. Like, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to get a job. Like, what am I going to do? And someone was like looking for a high school film teacher. So I was like, let me just bless these little kids in the hood for a second and like figure out how to write my scripts and like keep it moving. But, you know, that ended up being a 10-year detour. And then I'm like, all right, well, I'm making shorts and other things in this time, but like, I need to get back to my real screenplays, back into LA and like what's going on. I can't be teaching kids in Brooklyn forever. But now I will tell you, like, the spaces that I enter and the way that I could command those spaces simply from your own experience, you know what I mean? Where it's just like, oh, you want to talk about this? Cool. I've been an educator. Wait, you're the script assistant at Sesame Street. Yeah, I know, but I also have 10 years of education experience. You know what I mean? So it's like things come in different ways, in different times, and like really respecting the cultural value that you get from 1 year, from 10 years, from time where it feels like you might be getting derailed derailed. And like, that is a message to everybody in the Black film allegiance community that's listening to this. Like, don't fear being derailed. Just the other day, Impact Partners came out with an open writing assignment, right? A call for a screenwriter. And they're looking for like this NBA script that it's a basketball sports comedy. And it's about like an NBA, you know, they gave out the whole synopsis and they're looking for a screenwriter, right? So everyone has to submit, this is why I'm good for that. This is why I'm good for that. Well, the script is about a high school basketball team that sucks. And the son of an NBA player goes there and the nerdy math teacher saves the team, right? Well, I was like, cool. I taught at an environmental high school. We had no sports program because we were this small. We started the ragtag basketball team, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, when I'm approaching that as a screenwriter and I'm saying, oh, you're looking for someone to write that? Like, I am that dude. I've been that dude. I've lived the entire life. And now I'm coming here to tell you, you know, and so everyone should just value those. And even when I was like teaching my high school kids, you know, they're in Southside Williamsburg being like, yeah, what are we going to make a documentary about? What are we, you know, and it's like, obviously your own life is the place to start because most people in the world are not 13-year-olds on the south side of Williamsburg living in these projects. They're just not. Most people are just not that. So tell your story and show it to the rest of the people, you know, and it's just everywhere where you're developing that story. Like my first screenplay is about a teacher who's an activist who creates this activism program. And, you know, and I wrote it. When did I write it? I wrote it my last year of teaching when I was like weeping. Oh my God, you little kids, go do great, you know? And I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? And I'm like, let me put all of these years into this screenplay. And it's dope. It's hard. They go to a terrorist attack and all this other stuff that we won't get into until it's produced, you know? But yeah, so our experiences do inform our work. And I can also, you know, say that it's hard to just be humble. I was talking about that with another one of our young, my brother Eve, who was on our table talk earlier. And, you know, it's just that process of being humble is tough. And I will quote again, my brother Lewis, who came up from the streets of Accra, and now he's a chief that runs a school. And he says, be humble and be wise. That's his mantra, you know, and I just love to bless people with that, yourself, myself, and everyone else, you know, because that's really the steps. The steps are slow sometimes, but every minute is valuable, you know, every minute is valuable. So, but let me ask one last question as we do look ahead in the future, because like it's an industry, you know, and like for artists like us, like that's one thing I love and sometimes I hate about NYU. Like they made me so, I mean, I was already an artist, but like they just made me so focused on the art of my craft and like being an artist. And not every filmmaker came out of NYU doing that. So I know that's also me, like I'm an artist, but you know, for filmmakers like us that are pushing the limits, do you see yourself like making successful films that have theatrical releases? Is that your main goal? Like, do you think that's going to be your bread and butter? And if so, do you think they'll always be so structurally wide, or do you think that like you're going to have to bring it in to like sell your stuff to Hollywood, or what's your vibe? Or are there other outlets you want to go? Like, who cares about theatrical releases? Like, what's your kind of 5-10 year vision? Like if you were just everything was going.
The 5-year vision is definitely theatrical releases. Just like one, I'm trying to get, you know, less than 5 years, this TV show that I'm working on picked up, and I'm confident in it. Like I'm honestly very confident in the journey. I think even when we're thinking about Afrofuturism, like I've been doing that for the past like 6 years in terms of like representing in my work, and that's what the industry is like. How can we understand this? So, you know, I don't know. I'm just confident. I think I'm moving the right ways I need to move. And I think I'm putting in the time and the work, and what I'm producing is coming out strong and people are receiving it well. So, yeah, I mean, I think things are just manifesting, you know, like it might not fully, like I used to say that, yo, on a spiritual tip, your girl already made it. You literally in the spiritual realm, I already made it. I'm already destined to be who I'm supposed to be. And I really hold 10 toes down, believe that I'm going to be everything that I want to be. I see it for myself. And I've been on this track since I was a child. But I think, you know, outside of just like, you know, theatrical releases. I just want to be a visionary in everything that I do. So like, I'm a creative entrepreneur still. So, you know, like I have a Afro house and techno label with my partner, Eli, and we, that's something that is something else I'm building a brand for and I'm working on. We throw events in both New York and in Mexico, and are trying to have it be a global festival, but not even just from the music tip. Like, how can I create this brand that's really grounded in like a immersive visual experience? So that's something that I'm interested in on terms of side entrepreneurship, branded content. Like I do branded content. I directed, you know, commercials or done some brand work for big clients like Target, Capital One, like whatever.
It's all there. Nah, it's all there.
These things become like checkpoint. Like, all right, cool. Like things that help me get to the next level. Really, next step of what I'm trying to do. Like, it's not even something I'm like, woohoo! Hopefully, this will help me get the next job. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I want to do more of that. Like, I'm launching a creative agency that is kind of grounded in my voice. That's more tailored to branded content work. And then what else do I want to do? I mean, the other thing that I'm working towards is like why I like experimental docs is I've always been, my brother's really big in the fine art world, or he's really into the fine art world. And so a lot of our inspirations are not only from the filmmaking perspective, but are from like just a fine art world perspective. So I will be going to, for example, at the end of the year. Okay, nice.
That's how we keep that swag. That's how we do.
No, exactly.
We in that world.
Bring it up closer so everybody can see it, unless it's too.
Yeah, we'll bring it in. No, we'll bring it in.
Nice. These are it's like collage. It's a collage or painting. Fully.
It's a collage, and like every single thing that's in this is a photograph that I took.
Beautiful. It's nice.
And then everything is like cut by hand and then, you know, delivered out. So these are my spiritual guides, you know, and they just float around. Yeah, they float around the crib. But I feel you exactly. It's a fusion. The visual art is always going to be a part of it. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to enter the visual art world. I've not been able to. I need to get on the canvas and express myself on a canvas, whether or not collage. But I haven't dabbled in that yet. So more so like. So that's tight. That's tight. Just in terms of like thinking about different ways that people experience my art, not necessarily from a movie theater on like a TV or Netflix, whatever, but like museum spaces, video installations, like how can I get commissioned to do a really dope, you know, video installation on buildings in New York, like, or just like thinking outside of just the narrative or like the track of being a filmmaker, and also just like seeing the medium that I use is film and video, and my voice will be the same across all, you know, industries or all sectors of the visual art world that I'm in. But yeah, I want my art to live wherever it can live, and it will sometimes be like a theatrical release, and sometimes it might, you know, be at the Guggenheim. So, you know, like,
right. I mean, you see me, so I'm right there with you. And like the video art world, like sometimes I go to the museums and I look at like their video art, and I'm like, this is so whack. Like sometimes people get so high concept that I just call it how I see it. Like sometimes people get so high concept in the art world that they forget to have these dialogues about like really important identity building thing, you know what I mean? And like perceptions, race, social justice, a lot of that stuff gets just left out. Like they just get left out.
Like, yeah. I mean, you know, the fine art space is hella elitist. They don't, you know, that shit is a whole other conversation. But regardless, you know, I'm just trying to, like, I'll be in Senegal participating in Kahinde Wali's residency over in like October, November. So just trying to find ways to just start, you know, like I think everything that you want to do is just a matter of you starting it, you know?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I love that. And I will say, you know, everyone has their own path. Like we've had some folks on here that are like deep in the VR, like the real Afro future, like not that you're not in the real, but I just mean like they're living in the future. I've been exploring that. I did a 360 VR doc last year.
Yeah.
You know, and overall, it's like some people are just filmmakers. Like some people are just like, I'm a screenwriter. That's my shit, you know? And I love all of that. Like I love the whole spectrum, and especially in the context of the Black diaspora, like that's what this series is about. And so when you have some people around here, like I'm a screenwriter and like, I'll be a director when I get there, you know what I mean? And other folks like you and I are just like, I'm an artist. I don't care what the fuck. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. Like, there's so many ideas. Yeah, there's so many ideas we want to process. And I'm the same way. Like, I submitted an album to the Pulitzer Prize this year. You know what I mean? I was like, if Kendrick could get one, I want one too.
And
you
that's
know what I mean?
Gotta have, though. I want a Nobel Peace Prize. I deadass want to get a Nobel Peace Prize for my film work. like, you know, like my aunt got a Nobel Prize for her poetry.
Everything's available. Obama got it. Come on.
How can you be that? How can you make work that's impactful? That's something that it potentially can be a goal of yours. Like not even just, I'm trying to get theatrical releases, but like, how can I really be a culture ambassador and like somebody in my work that really bridges cultures and makes solidarity happen, you know, like.
Right.
So I feel like with few, that's where the heart, that's like, you know, the heart of, I feel like what I'm trying to do. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited for the future. I feel like my mind is always in the future. So I feel myself where like already at the destination. Like I feel myself. I feel like I'm just like being pulled and, you know, on this conveyor belt and like having to do what I gotta do to make sure that I'm able to get to that destination I'm being pulled to. So yeah, you know, faith-based journey, artists at faith-based journey, you gotta keep that faith strong because, you know, that's when you quit. I guess when you lose the faith, it's not going to be able to happen for yourself. Man, that's when you quit. It's really just a matter of keeping it going half the time, most of the time, you know. So, but yeah,
we're talking about stamina. You know, it's about stamina sometimes. Like, can you continue to produce at that level over the course of multiple decades? Because that's really what it's about. You know what I mean? So, you know, and the artists that Kanye, you know, once you start getting 20, 30, 10 years, how many, you know, and you're like, okay, if they're still around, that's how we know, you know, that they had it. So, but that's what the future holds for us. And may we all journey there safely and, you know, in health and full of insight and brilliance to share with the world, you know. So thank you so much for sharing some of your insight and your ambition, your passion, your inspiration. And hopefully you also have some space to take some things in and grow and be stimulated creatively as well. So that's what it's always about, the exchange. So always, you know, I want to thank the Black Film Allegiance. Like,
absolutely.
I came onto this because like I have a background as an educator. I was like, let's do some workshops together. They said, well, what do you want to talk about? And like, this is what's on my head right now. And most of my work is informed from that, living on the continent and trying to build these bridges more, you know, and then it's like, I'm actually not just having this experience where I get to have the table talk, but like everybody that I've been, you know, working with, it's like, oh, well, let's link on the flip side, like, let's hook up on this project. And like, oh, well, next time when that's, you know, and that's the purpose of the Black Film Allegiance. Absolutely. So like seeing it, even though it was not a community that I was like deeply a part of, but seeing it function and actually, help me make connections with other folks who are like-minded, other creatives. It's been dope. So Jasmine, Elon, Rich, who's doing our post work, I just always want to shout out, you know, because if it's not community, you know, shout out to your man, Eli, and like your brother, you know what I mean? Just everybody always got to get their little piece because everybody's doing their part. So bless up. Stay blessed, Chelsea.
Thank you.